Okay, welcome to another deep dive. You know how this works? We're taking a look at the material you brought us
Right.
and really trying to uncover, those golden nuggets of wisdom that can help us all live more fulfilling lives.
Yeah.
You've shared some selections from, let's see, Dissecting Echotruth book, Volume 2, Chapter 6, Finding Balance, Daily Steps to a Fulfilling Life. That title alone,
Oh, it's ambitious.
it really sets the bar high.
Yeah.
So the material spans quite a range, everything from cultivating like that inner joy and peace to how we should treat others in the natural world to, this is a big one, really understanding like the fundamental nature of truth itself.
Yeah.
So our mission, if you will, with this deep dive is to make these sometimes complex ideas really accessible and give you some practical tools to apply them, right?
Yeah.
Without feeling like you've just sat through a college philosophy lecture.
Absolutely. I think what's so interesting about this particular text is how it weaves together these different dimensions of life, It's not just about feeling good or having a successful career in isolation. It's about how our inner world, our actions out in the world, and our understanding of truth, how all of these pieces actually work together.
It's like a system, right?
Totally. And it's a dynamic system, If one piece is off kilter, everything else is affected.
Right.
So part of what we're doing here is trying to help you see those connections.
Okay, so let's jump right in. The text starts with a point that seems pretty fundamental, self-reflection.
Right.
It really emphasizes taking a good hard look at our own shortcomings before we jump to criticize others. It even says something about how our own ignorance and self-deception, that's a powerful phrase, can really cloud our judgment and prevent us from, really seeing things clearly. So what do you think is the most important takeaway from this focus on looking inward first?
Well, to me, it's highlighting how our internal state, like our beliefs, our biases, even the things we're not fully aware of, it acts as a lens, right, through which we see everything else. And if that lens itself is distorted, if it's smudged, then our judgments about others are likely to be off as well.
Right. Like,
it's that saying.
Yeah. It's like trying to clean someone else's glasses when your own are dirty.
Exactly.
Yeah. And this idea really resonates with wisdom traditions throughout history that emphasize self-knowledge as the foundation for understanding the world.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then the text introduces this concept of an inner garden. I love that image, by the way.
It's beautiful, yeah.
It describes it as something that thrives, that flourishes when we do things, when we act in a way that's aligned with truth.
Okay.
And what it calls the primal source or creation.
Right.
And this inner garden is described as being filled with all these amazing things like, love, knowledge, wisdom, peace, freedom, harmony. It's like creating this internal paradise.
Right.
So how do we actually cultivate this according to the text? How do we make this inner garden grow?
Well, what's really interesting here is the very direct connection being drawn between our actions in the world, our external actions,
Right.
and our inner state. It suggests that what it calls righteous actions aren't just about blindly following rules. It's about behaving in a way that's truly aligned with those fundamental truths.
Oh, right. Yeah.
With what it calls creation or the primal source.
Like a cause and effect almost.
Yeah. Think of it like planting seeds.
Oh, good.
If you plant seeds of kindness, honesty, you're more likely to reap a harvest of peace and harmony. It's like you're creating a whole inner ecosystem where positive actions really nourish positive inner states.
Yeah. It's not just thinking the right thoughts. It's living them out.
Exactly.
And this connection between our actions and a sense of inner balance, it extends beyond just how we treat other people. Right. The text is very specific about how we should treat animals. It says we should avoid causing them unnecessary suffering, unless it's in self-defense.
Right.
That we shouldn't destroy anything that's been gifted by creation.
Yeah.
It even says that these kinds of actions, they align us with, quote, malevolence and harm what's meant for, quote, joy, prosperity, and conservation of life. That's a pretty strong statement.
It is. And it really speaks to this idea that our inner harmony It's not isolated. It's deeply interconnected with how we treat the world around us. It's a principle of respect, right,
Yeah.
of all forms of life for the resources that sustain us. If you constantly pollute a garden, eventually that pollution is going to affect the health of the plants within it.
That's a great analogy.
And in a similar way, the text is suggesting that how we act towards the natural world, towards animals,
Right.
it really has a direct impact on our own well-being.
It disrupts the whole balance, the ecosystem.
Exactly.
Okay, now the text then moves into some areas that touch on our dignity, how we interact with others.
Yep.
It makes a point about engaging with sex workers,
Yeah.
saying that it diminishes one's own dignity.
Right.
It warns against obscene greed and selfishness
Yeah.
in our lives, whether that's in business or relationships. It also says that how we fare financially is connected to our actions, our reputation, and what we say. And then it emphasizes that everyone should have equal rights, regardless of their financial status. There's quite a bit packed into this section.
There is. And I think what ties all these seemingly disparate points together is this idea of living with integrity, right? Across all aspects of our lives. That point about engaging with sex workers, it seems to be framed in terms of how our choices reflect on our own self-respect. The kinds of relationships we choose to participate in.
Okay, yeah.
The warning against greed and selfishness, whether it's in our work or our personal lives, it speaks to how those motivations can really eat away at our inner peace.
Right.
And damage our relationships with others.
Damage the garden.
Yeah. And that link between our actions, our reputation, and our financial well-being, it underscores this idea of cause and effect,
Right.
What we do has consequences.
Right.
And then that reaffirmation of equal rights for everyone, regardless of wealth, it points to this, this really fundamental principle of fairness.
Right.
And the inherent value of every human being.
It's interesting how all of these ideas, they kind of circle back to this central theme of living in a way that fosters that inner peace and aligns with these ethical principles.
Absolutely.
Now, from there, the text shifts its focus to the role of truth. It states that the universe operates according to the, quote, truth embedded in the framework of the laws of creation, and that this is all designed to help us reach a higher consciousness. Big ideas.
Huge, yeah.
It talks about how we have the freedom to choose whether or not we want to pursue this truth,
Right.
but that it's important not to hinder others who are on that path. It also mentions that it can be really hard to find your way back to truth, if you've been distracted or led astray.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the core message here about truth?
Well, I think what's so fascinating is this idea that truth isn't just some abstract concept,
Right.
It's like the fundamental operating system of the universe.
Okay.
And the text suggests that aligning ourselves with this underlying truth, it's essential for our own growth
Okay.
and development. Think of it like trying to navigate using an outdated map.
Oh, wow.
You might get somewhere, but you're not going to find the most efficient route, right?
Right.
And similarly, ignoring or rejecting truth can lead us astray in life.
It can lead us down the wrong path.
Yeah, exactly. And then that point about not hindering others in their search for truth, it highlights the importance of, intellectual and spiritual freedom.
Right.
Ultimately, it seems to be saying that living in accordance with truth, that's the foundation of a truly meaningful and honorable life.
And that idea leads us into the text's stance on warfare, which is pretty strong.
Very strong, yeah.
It argues that all forms of warfare go against those fundamental principles of creation,
Right.
because they diminish human dignity and the value of life. It says that taking a life is only justified in self-defense when you're in immediate danger,
Right.
not in those larger conflicts that are driven by ego and ignorance. It even rejects religious wars aimed at conversion, saying they cause unnecessary destruction and suffering.
Yeah.
And instead, it presents this idea of a truly honorable war,
Right.
as this internal struggle, right, to be more righteous, fair, and dignified. It's a very different way of looking at conflict.
It really is. And if we connect it back to that inner garden idea,
Uh-huh.
warfare, with all its violence and destruction, it's essentially the opposite
Right.
of cultivating peace and harmony.
Right.
The text is drawing a very clear distinction between that outward aggression
Right.
and the internal work that we do on ourselves.
Right.
That honorable war within, that effort to overcome our own negative tendencies and strive for virtue, it's presented as the real path to inner peace and liberation from ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that rejection of religiously motivated violence,
Right.
it's particularly significant. It's highlighting that true spiritual principles, they should lead to compassion, not conflict.
Okay, so moving on, the text gets very specific about how we should treat animals, especially when it comes to, food.
Right.
It really emphasizes the importance of treating them with dignity, even when we need to kill them for food or self-defense. And it condemns things like joy killing and cruel methods of slaughter. It even advises against eating animals that died on their own or were killed in ways that caused them, a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
Suggesting that the distress of the animal can actually psychically affect those who eat it.
Wow, that's interesting.
Plus, it mentions avoiding animals that scavengers have gotten to,
Okay.
and those used in rituals.
Right.
And then it also recommends that we make sure to include fruits in our diet.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of details here.
There are, and it's fascinating to see this level of ethical consideration being applied to our relationship with animals,
Yeah.
It really underscores that principle of minimizing suffering
Right.
for all living beings. And those guidelines around how animals should be killed for food, they seem rooted in this idea of respect, right? And
Right.
avoiding unnecessary pain.
Right.
That suggestion that the anguish of an animal can actually impact the person who eats it. That's a really interesting one, and implies this this deep interconnectedness,
Yeah.
between all beings. And then those dietary recommendations, the emphasis on fruits, it suggests this broader philosophy that values nourishment obtained in a way that's aligned with compassion and
Right.
respect for life.
Okay, now moving along, the text talks about the empowering nature of justice and truth,
Okay.
saying that when we're aware of unfairness and we stick to the truth, it actually gives us strength and attracts support. And that goes on to list 12 guiding values that come from embracing truth.
Yeah.
Things like, love, appreciation, respect, kindness, dignity, virtues, loyalty, fairness, all these amazing qualities.
Yeah.
And it stresses that we need to actively live by these truths, not just, know about them.
Right.
And it even suggests that we can break free from past mistakes by turning to truth and creating this what it calls an island of truth within ourselves.
Yeah.
So truth is being presented here as a really dynamic and transformative force in our lives.
Absolutely. And what's so powerful is this idea that truth isn't static. It's
Yeah.
not just a bunch of facts.
Uh-huh.
It's an active principle that can really reshape our inner world.
Right.
And our relationships with others. And that list of 12 values, it's like a
Yeah.
practical guide,
Yeah.
for how to live in alignment with this truth.
Yeah.
And that image of building an island of truth within ourselves.
Yeah, that's powerful.
That's a beautiful metaphor. It suggests that by consciously choosing truth, we can create this foundation of integrity and understanding that can really anchor us,
Yeah.
amidst all the challenges of life.
It's like a safe haven almost.
Exactly.
Okay, from there, the text delves into this idea that that the original true teachings from authentic prophets, have been distorted, twisted, replaced by misleading ideas and false prophets.
Oh, wow.
It suggests that that when our ancestors accepted these incorrect teachings, it led to this ongoing animosity, hatred, and violence that's been passed down through generations. That's a pretty big historical claim.
It is. It really highlights the potential for for distortion when it comes to these important teachings.
Right.
And the long-term consequences of accepting those distortions as truth, right?
Right.
It's suggesting that those inaccuracies, they can become so deeply ingrained over time, and they can lead to these cycles of conflict and misunderstanding that can last for generations.
And continue. Yeah.
Yeah. And this really underscores the importance of continually seeking out those authentic sources of wisdom and being willing to question those long-held beliefs that might not actually be serving us.
Okay, now this leads into a discussion about the nature of creation's laws.
Yeah.
And the text explains that they function more like natural laws, like gravity, rather than through arbitrary acts of forgiveness or punishment.
Right.
It emphasizes that we develop our own sense of right and wrong through our life experiences and our inherent nature.
Yeah.
And that this eventually leads us towards understanding those fundamental laws. And it even says that this process fosters forgiveness and justice. So it's more about learning through natural consequences than about external judgment.
Yeah, I think that's a key takeaway. The text is presenting a universe that's governed by these consistent principles, rather than by random rewards or punishments. Our actions set in motion consequences, and those consequences provide us with opportunities to learn and grow. And this internal process of understanding these natural laws, that's what ultimately cultivates our sense of accountability and leads to both self-forgiveness and this desire for justice in our interactions with others.
It's like this inherent system of learning built into the universe.
Exactly.
Okay, so the text also offers some specific advice on how to interact with different societies and individuals.
Okay.
It suggests being cautious around countries that are violent or restrict freedom.
Right.
It recommends showing respect when entering someone's home, advocating for a more rehabilitative approach to theft, focusing on reflection rather than harsh punishment.
Yeah.
And it stresses the importance of treating everyone with justice, compassion, forgiveness, and fairness, regardless of their gender, and extending kindness to those who genuinely show remorse. So it's a pretty comprehensive set of social guidelines.
It is. And it's really beautiful how all these practical guidelines, they flow directly from those there's fundamental values of respect, justice, and compassion that are so central to the text. That advice about engaging with potentially harmful societies, it underscores the importance of discernment, and prioritizing safety and well-being. That etiquette for entering a home, it highlights respect for personal space and cultural norms. The suggested approach to theft, it focuses on addressing those root causes and promoting rehabilitation rather than just punishment. And then that overarching emphasis on treating all individuals with fairness and kindness, it really reinforces that core ethical framework that we've been talking about.
It's about putting those principles into action.
Absolutely.
Now, the text then touches on how to address injustice within a society, suggesting that, if those in power fail to act justly, the appropriate response is to work towards political change through things like elections and establishing fair laws that apply to everyone equally. It sounds like a call for active and responsible civic engagement.
It is. What I find so powerful here is the emphasis on on systemic solutions when faced with injustice. The text is advocating for using those established mechanisms of change, democratic processes and legal reforms to create a more equitable society.
It's about changing the system, not just, hoping that individuals will do the right thing.
Exactly.
Okay, and then we get some specific warnings about alcohol and gambling. It discusses the potential dangers of drinking too much and the addictive nature of gambling, even comparing it to the worship of false idols. So these seem like pretty clear cautions about things that can, that can negatively impact our well-being and potentially lead us astray.
Absolutely. And these warnings really align with that, with that overall theme of maintaining inner clarity and avoiding behaviors that can lead to harm, both to ourselves and to others. Overindulgence in alcohol, it can cloud our judgment, lead to destructive actions. And gambling is presented as, having the potential to become this consuming obsession that really distracts us from those more meaningful pursuits.
It can take over.
It can, yeah.
Okay, so the text wraps up by giving us some guidance on managing our inner emotions. It emphasizes the importance of avoiding negative feelings like hatred and envy, and sticking to those principles of creation that we talked about. It stresses that our spiritual growth is our own responsibility, and encourages us to learn from true spiritual teachers who embody compassion and wisdom. And it even includes a guided meditation for manifesting our desires. It's a It's a pretty comprehensive conclusion.
It is, and that emphasis on, on managing our inner emotional landscape, it reinforces that idea that our internal state is really fundamental to living a fulfilling life, right?
Right.
And that focus on personal responsibility for our spiritual growth, it's empowering. It reminds us that we are active agents in our own development. And that encouragement to seek out and learn from wise individuals, that provides us with this valuable guidepost. And then the inclusion of that meditation, it offers a practical tool for connecting with our inner desires,
Right.
and with that sense of the larger universe. So the overall message seems to be one of continuous striving for inner alignment and growth.
So to bring it all together, this deep dive into the excerpts from Dissecting Echotruth has really underscored the importance of inner work, ethical behavior, the pursuit of truth, and understanding those fundamental principles as pathways to a more fulfilling life. It's not about focusing on just one area, right?
Yeah.
It's about how all these aspects of our lives are interconnected and
Yeah.
influence each other.
What I find so striking is that very interconnectedness,
Yeah.
Our inner state, it shapes our actions. Our actions influence our inner state,
Right.
and our commitment to truth, it guides both.
It's this ongoing dance almost.
It is. It's a continuous and dynamic process of seeking balance and
Right.
alignment in all areas of our lives.
Well, perhaps the most profound journey we can undertake is that ongoing effort, right, to bring our inner world into harmony with those fundamental truths that resonate with the very fabric of existence.
I love that.
How might consciously reflecting on your daily actions through this lens, constantly asking yourself, do my actions align with these principles?
Yeah.
How might that reshape your understanding and cultivation of your own inner garden?
That's a powerful question.
That's a question worth exploring. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Thank you.
Until next time.